Hello there, and welcome to Whispers of Science, where the mysteries of our universe unfold like quiet secrets in the dark. Tonight, we're embarking on a journey that might just turn everything you think you know about reality completely upside down. We're exploring one of the most mind bending possibilities in all of physics, the idea that time itself might be flowing backwards, and we might not even notice. Now, before you dismiss this as pure science fiction, let me ask you something. Have you ever had that strange feeling that something just happened in reverse? Maybe you watched a glass of water, and for just a split second, it seemed like the ripples were moving inward, or perhaps you've experienced that eerie sensation where a conversation felt like it was rewinding itself. These moments might be more significant than we realize. I'm absolutely fascinated by this topic, and I do hope you'll find it as intriguing as I do if you enjoy these gentle explorations into the stranger corners of science. I'd be ever so grateful if you gave this video a like, subscribed to the channel, or simply left a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from and what time it is right now. Fitting, isn't it, a video about backwards time? And here we are, each experiencing our own unique moment in the cosmic flow. Now, I should warn you, this journey might be so fascinating that it keeps you awake tonight. But if it does, at least you'll have pondered one of the deepest mysteries of existence. And that seems like a fair trade to me. So settle in, take a deep breath, and let's begin our quiet voyage into the possibility that everything we think we know about the direction of time might be beautifully backwards. Imagine for a moment that you're watching a movie, but the projectionist has accidentally loaded the film backwards. You see people walking in reverse cars, driving in reverse conversations, happening in reverse. But here's the strange part. Everyone in the movie thinks they're moving forward. They're having normal conversations, making normal decisions, living what they believe are normal lives. They have no idea that from your perspective, outside the theater, they're all moving backwards through time. This isn't just a thought experiment. It's a genuine possibility that some of the brightest minds in physics are seriously considering. What if our entire universe is like that backwards movie? What if time is flowing in the opposite direction from what we perceive, and we're all just actors in a cosmic film running in reverse, completely unaware of our backwards journey through existence? The idea sounds absurd at first glance. After all, we experience time as a steady march from past to present to future. We remember yesterday, we live in today, we anticipate tomorrow. This feels like the most fundamental truth of our existence. Time moves forward, period. But physics has a way of making the obvious seem questionable and the impossible seem plausible. Let's start with something that might surprise you. The laws of physics don't actually prefer one direction of time over another. If you were to film two particles colliding and then play that film backwards, the physics would still make perfect sense. The equations that govern the behavior of matter and energy work just as well in reverse as they do forward. This is called time symmetry, and it's one of the most profound discoveries in modern physics. Think about it this way. If you watched a perfectly elastic ball bouncing between two walls, you couldn't tell from the physics alone whether the film was running forwards or backwards. The ball follows the same mathematical rules in either direction. The same is true for planets orbiting stars, electrons moving around atoms, and most of the fundamental interactions that govern our universe. But wait, you might say, surely we can tell which direction time is moving. Just look around you. Cups break but don't spontaneously reassemble, people. Age but don't get younger. Entropy increases but never decreases. These are all signs that time has a clear direction, aren't they? Well, yes, and that's where things get beautifully complicated. The direction we perceive time to be moving is largely determined by something called the second law of thermodynamics, which states that entropy or disorder tends to increase over time. This gives us what physicists call the arrow of time, the reason we experience time as moving from past to future. But here's the fascinating part: the arrow of time isn't necessarily the same thing as the flow of time. Think of it like this: imagine you're on a train looking out the window at the countryside passing by. You naturally assume you're moving forward because that's the direction the scenery is flowing past you. But what if the entire landscape was actually moving backwards and your train was stationary? You'd still see the same flow of scenery past your window, but your perception of which direction is forward would be completely wrong. Some physicists are beginning to wonder if we might be in a similar situation with time. What if the universe is actually evolving backwards through time, but because we're embedded within it, because our memories, our consciousness, our entire perception apparatus is also moving backwards? We experience everything as moving forward. This isn't just philosophical speculation. There are real physical theories that suggest this possibility. One of the most intriguing comes from the study of quantum mechanics and something called the Wheeler-DeWitt equation. When physicists try to describe the quantum state of the entire universe, they find that time often disappears from the equations altogether. Instead of time flowing in a particular direction, the universe might exist as a kind of eternal block where all moments past, present, and future exist simultaneously. What we perceive as the flow of time might simply be the way our consciousness samples different slices of this eternal block, and there's no guarantee that we're sampling them in the order we think we are. Consider this mind-bending possibility. What if right now, as you're listening to these words, you're actually experiencing a moment that, from the universe's perspective, happened after what you think of as tomorrow? What if your memories of yesterday are actually glimpses of the future, and your anticipations of tomorrow are echoes of the past? The human brain is remarkably good at creating the illusion of continuity. We stitch together discrete moments of experience into what feels like a smooth, flowing narrative of consciousness. But this stitching process happens after the fact. Your brain takes the raw data of experience and organizes it into a story that makes sense, and part of that story is the assumption that time moves forward. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if your brain is actually organizing experiences that are happening in reverse temporal order, but because the organizing process itself is also happening in reverse, everything feels normal to you? It's like being in a car that's rolling backwards down a hill while you're facing backwards in your seat. From your perspective, you're moving forward, but from an outside observer's perspective, you're clearly going in reverse. There's another fascinating aspect to consider: the nature of causality. We typically think that causes precede effects. You flip a switch, and then the light turns on. You drop a glass, and then it breaks. But in a backwards flowing time, these relationships would be reversed. The light would turn on, and then you would flip the switch, the glass would break, and then you would drop it from your backwards perspective, though you'd still experience these as normal cause and effect relationships. You'd remember deciding to flip the switch and then seeing the light turn on. You'd remember accidentally dropping the glass and then watching it shatter. Your subjective experience of causality would remain intact, even though, from the universe's perspective, the effects were actually preceding the causes. This raises profound questions about free will and decision making. If time is flowing backwards, are we making choices, or are our choices making us? When you decide to have coffee instead of tea, are you actually causing that decision to happen, or is the decision somehow reaching backwards in time to create the experience of choosing some theories? In physics, suggests that information can indeed flow backwards through time. Quantum mechanics allows for phenomena where measuring a particle in the present can retroactively determine properties it had in the past. This might sound like science fiction, but it's been demonstrated in laboratory experiments. Particles can be entangled across time, just as they can be entangled across space. If information can flow backwards, then perhaps our decisions, our thoughts, our entire conscious experience might be the result of future states reaching back to influence past moments. What we interpret as making a choice might actually be the subjective experience of a future outcome selecting its own past. This doesn't necessarily mean we lack free will, but it might mean that free will operates in ways we don't fully understand. Perhaps consciousness exists outside the normal flow of time, able to influence events in both directions. Perhaps what we call the present moment is actually a kind of intersection point where past and future meet and interact. The implications extend beyond individual consciousness to the entire history of the universe. If time is flowing backwards, then what we call the Big Bang might actually be the Big Crunch, the final collapse of the universe into a singularity. What we interpret as cosmic expansion might actually be cosmic contraction. Happening in reverse galaxies would be moving toward each other, not away from each other, but because we're embedded in the backwards flow of time. We'd perceive them as receding. The cosmic microwave background radiation that we see as the afterglow of the universe's birth might actually be the preglow of its death light that will eventually converge on the final singularity, but that we observe as diverging from an initial one. Stars wouldn't be burning fuel and growing dimmer, they'd be absorbing energy and growing brighter. Planets wouldn't be cooling down from their formation, they'd be heating up toward their destruction. Life wouldn't be evolving from simple to complex forms, it would be devolving from complex to simple, but at each step of this devolution, the living beings would experience themselves as evolving, becoming more sophisticated, more aware, more alive. Even our understanding of evolution might need to be reconsidered. What if the complexity we observe in life isn't the result of gradual development over billions of years, but rather the gradual simplification of something that was once far more complex? What if humans aren't the current pinnacle of evolutionary development, but rather a simplified version of what we're moving toward in our backwards journey through time? The fossil record that we interpret as showing progression from simple to complex organisms might actually be showing the reverse. The apparent development of life on Earth might be its dissolution playing out in what we perceive as forward times, but what is actually reverse time. This perspective doesn't diminish the wonder of life or consciousness. It simply frames them differently. Instead of being the unlikely result of random processes, over vast spans of time, life becomes the inevitable simplification of something that was always meant to be. Instead of consciousness emerging from unconscious matter, consciousness might be returning to unconscious matter, having once been far more aware than we can currently imagine. The more you think about this backwards time hypothesis, the more it starts to explain some of the most puzzling aspects of our existence. Have you ever wondered why we have such vivid dreams that feel completely real while we're experiencing them, but fade so quickly upon waking? What if dreams aren't random neural firing during sleep, but glimpses of our forward moving experiences bleeding through into our backwards flowing consciousness? During sleep, our brain's normal temporal organizing mechanisms relax their grip, and perhaps in those moments, we catch fleeting glimpses of time flowing in its true direction. Dreams often have that peculiar quality of feeling both familiar and strange, as if we're remembering something that hasn't happened yet, or experiencing something that's already passed. This could be our consciousness briefly aligning with the actual flow of time before our waking mind reasserts its backwards narrative. Consider, too, the phenomenon of deja vu, that eerie feeling that you've experienced something before, even though you know you haven't. Traditional explanations suggest it's a glitch in memory processing. But what if it's actually a moment when your backwards flowing consciousness briefly glimpses the forward flowing reality? You're not remembering something that happened before. You're remembering something that's happening in the universe's true temporal direction. Even more intriguing are those rare individuals who claim to have prophetic dreams or premonitions that later come true. Skeptics dismiss these as coincidence or selective memory. But in a backwards flowing time, such experiences might be perfectly natural moments when someone's consciousness temporarily synchronizes with the actual direction of temporal flow. They're not seeing the future, they're briefly experiencing the present from the universe's perspective. This backwards time hypothesis might also shed light on the mystery of consciousness itself. Philosophers have long struggled with what's called the hard problem of consciousness. How does subjective experience arise from objective matter? How do we get the feeling of what it's like to be you from mere neural activity? Perhaps consciousness isn't something that emerges from complex arrangements of matter, but something that's always been there, waiting to be simplified into the forms we recognize. Imagine consciousness as a vast ocean of awareness that exists outside of time. From our backwards perspective, we experience ourselves as developing consciousness, growing from unconscious babies into aware adults. But what if we're actually moving from a state of total cosmic awareness toward the simple focused awareness we experience as individual human consciousness? This would mean that death isn't the end of consciousness, but a transition into a broader, more encompassing form of awareness. What we fear as the loss of self might actually be the expansion of self into something far greater than we can currently comprehend from our backwards flowing perspective. We see death as an ending, but from the universe's perspective, it might be a beginning. The elderly often speak of feeling like they're returning to something familiar, as if their entire life has been a journey back home. This sensation might not be metaphorical, but literal. They might be approaching the state of expanded consciousness from which they originally came their backwards journey, through individual awareness, bringing them closer to the universal awareness that is their true nature. Even our relationship with knowledge and learning takes on new meaning in a backwards flowing time. We don't discover truths, we rediscover them. We don't invent technologies, we uncover technologies that were always meant to be. The great insights in science, mathematics, and philosophy aren't breakthroughs, but breakbacks. Moments when we remember what we once knew but had forgotten in our backwards journey through time. This might explain why certain mathematical truths feel so elegant and inevitable, why some scientific discoveries seem to reveal deep harmonies in nature rather than arbitrary facts. The universe isn't randomly structured, it's returning to a state of perfect order, and we're gradually remembering that order as we move backwards through time toward it. The experience of learning itself becomes a form of temporal archaeology. We're not building knowledge from scratch. We're excavating knowledge that was already there waiting to be rediscovered. Each equation we derive, each natural law we uncover, each artistic masterpiece we create is actually a restoration of something that existed in the future we're moving toward. Creativity, too, takes on new dimensions. Artists often describe the feeling that they're not creating something new, but discovering something that already exists, waiting to be found. Writers speak of characters who seem to have lives of their own. Musicians describe melodies that seem to come from somewhere beyond their conscious mind. Perhaps these experiences reflect the reality that in backwards flowing time, all art, all beauty, all truth already exists in the future we're approaching. The greatest works of human achievement might not be innovations, but excavations, moments when someone's backwards flowing consciousness successfully retrieves something from the forward flowing reality. They're embedded in the Mona Lisa Bach's fugues. Shakespeare's sonnets might all be archaeological discoveries, artifacts recovered from a future where such beauty was commonplace. This perspective transforms our understanding of progress and development. What we call human advancement might actually be human return. We're not moving towards some unknown future. We're moving back toward a known past that we've temporarily forgotten. Our technological development, our social evolution, our spiritual growth might all be forms of remembering, gradually recalling abilities and insights we once possessed. The great spiritual traditions of the world often speak of enlightenment as a return to our true nature, a remembering of what we really are rather than an achievement of something new. Perhaps these traditions have intuited what physics is now suggesting, that our journey through existence is not a movement towards something unknown, but a return to something we've always been. Meditation practices that quiet the mind and dissolve the sense of individual self might work by temporarily stopping the backwards flow of personal consciousness, allowing practitioners to glimpse the forward flowing, universal consciousness that underlies all experience. The peace and clarity reported in deep meditative states might be brief contacts with our true temporal orientation. Prayer, too, might operate on similar principles when people report feeling connected to something greater than themselves. They might be experiencing moments when their backwards flowing individual consciousness aligns with the forward flowing cosmic consciousness. The sense of being heard, of being part of something larger, might reflect the reality that we are indeed part of something larger, moving in the opposite direction from our perceived experience. Love presents perhaps the most beautiful paradox in backwards flowing time. The deep connections we form with others, the bonds that seem to transcend individual existence, might be glimpses of the unified consciousness we're returning to when we feel that someone completes us or that we've known them forever. We might be experiencing the truth that in the forward flowing reality, we are indeed one consciousness, temporarily experiencing itself as separate. The pain of separation, the grief we feel when we lose someone we love, might be the backwards flowing experience of joy, the joy of union that exists in the forward flowing reality. Death separates us in our backwards perspective, but unites us in the universe's forward perspective. Every goodbye we experience might actually be a hello happening in reverse. This backwards time hypothesis even reframes our understanding of suffering and evil. If we're moving backwards through time toward a state of perfect harmony, then all the pain, struggle, and injustice we experience might be the backwards perception of healing, resolution, and justice. The universe isn't becoming more chaotic and unfair, it's becoming more ordered and just. But we experience this positive transformation in reverse. Wars don't create destruction, they resolve destruction. Conflicts don't generate suffering, they resolve suffering. Diseases don't cause illness, they cure illness. But because we experience all of this backwards, we perceive creation where there is resolution, we see beginnings where there are endings, we feel loss where there is gain. This doesn't minimize the reality of suffering. In our experience, pain is still pain, regardless of its temporal orientation, but it does suggest that all suffering serves a purpose in the cosmic order. Every difficulty we face might be part of a larger healing process that we can't see because we're experiencing it backwards. The moral implications are profound if we're all moving together through backwards time toward the same destination. Then every person we encounter is a fellow traveler on the same journey. Their struggles are our struggles. Their healing is our healing. Their awakening is our awakening. The compassion we feel for others might be an intuitive recognition of this shared backwards journey toward unity, and perhaps this is why acts of kindness feel so natural to us, why helping others brings such deep satisfaction. We're not just being nice, we're participating in the cosmic healing process that's unfolding in reverse. Every moment of compassion, every gesture of love, every choice to forgive rather than harbor resentment might be our backwards flowing consciousness, briefly aligning with the forward flowing reality, where all beings are already healed, already whole, already one. But if time is indeed flowing backwards, how might we actually test this hypothesis? How could we possibly detect whether we're living our lives in reverse without realizing it? The challenge is enormous, because any test we devise, any measurement we make, any observation we conduct, would itself be happening in backwards time, making it nearly impossible to step outside our temporal perspective and see the truth. However, there might be subtle clues hidden in plain sight phenomena that seem to violate our normal understanding of cause and effect. Moments when the backwards nature of time briefly shows through the illusion of forward flow. These clues would be rare and easily dismissed as coincidence or measurement error, but they might be our only windows into the true nature of temporal reality. Quantum mechanics already provides us with some tantalizing hints. Particles can become entangled across time, just as they do across space measurements. made on a quantum system can retroactively determine properties. It had in the past. This suggests that information can indeed flow backwards through time, that future events can influence past states in ways that classical physics never imagined possible. If consciousness operates on quantum principles, as some theories suggest, then our minds might occasionally pick up these backwards flowing information streams. We might experience them as intuitions, sudden insights, or those mysterious moments when we know something we shouldn't know, dreams that come true, hunches that prove accurate, sudden solutions to problems we weren't consciously working on might all be examples of our backwards flowing consciousness, briefly accessing forward flowing information. There's also the curious phenomenon of synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences that seem too perfect to be random. You think of an old friend and they call you out of the blue. You need a particular piece of information and it appears exactly when you need it. You wonder about something, and the universe seems to provide an answer through an unexpected series of events. If time is flowing backwards, these synchronicities might not be coincidences at all. They might be the backwards experience of carefully orchestrated events. The universe might be organizing itself to provide exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. But because you experience this organization in reverse, it appears as miraculous coincidence rather than natural order. Consider, too, the strange way that problems often seem to solve themselves if you worry intensely about something for a while and then let it go. The solution frequently appears as if from nowhere. This might not be the result of your unconscious mind working on the problem, but rather the backwards experience of a solution, reaching back through time to resolve its own preconditions. The act of letting go might actually be the act of allowing the forward flowing solution to connect with your backwards flowing problem when you stop forcing. Trying to control the outcome, you create space for the natural resolution that already exists in the forward flowing timeline to manifest in your backwards flowing experience. Even the placebo effect, that mysterious phenomenon where believing something will help actually makes it help, might be explained by backwards flowing time. The healing might already exist in the forward flowing reality, and the belief might be what allows your backwards flowing consciousness to access that healing. The pill doesn't cure you because you believe it will. You believe it will cure you because it already has in the forward flowing timeline. This perspective radically alters our understanding of hope and faith. These aren't just positive mental attitudes, they might be glimpses of actual future realities bleeding back through time when you feel hopeful about something that seems impossible. You might be sensing its reality in the forward flowing timeline when you have faith that things will work out. You might be detecting the resolution that already exists. Prayer and intention might work not by influencing future events, but by aligning your backwards flowing consciousness with forward flowing realities that already contain what you're praying for. The universe doesn't grant your wishes, it reveals that your wishes are already granted in the timeline you're moving toward. This could explain why so many spiritual traditions emphasize gratitude, not just for what you have, but for what you hope to receive. Gratitude might be the emotional state that best aligns backwards, flowing consciousness with forward flowing abundance when you feel grateful for something. Before it appears in your experience, You might be accessing the reality where it already exists. The practice of visualization, too, takes on new meaning. You're not creating a future reality through mental images. You're remembering a forward flowing reality through backwards flowing consciousness. The clearer and more detailed your visualization, the stronger your connection to the timeline where that reality already exists. Manifestation becomes not a matter of attracting what you want, but of aligning with what already is. The universe isn't responding to your desires, it's revealing that your desires are reflections of realities that exist in the forward flowing timeline. You're not manifesting your dreams, you're remembering them. This backwards time hypothesis might also explain the phenomenon of prophetic literature and art throughout history. There have been works of fiction that seem to predict future events with uncanny accuracy. Jules Verne's Submarines and space travel H.G. Wells's Time Machines and Atomic Energy. George Orwell's Surveillance states, these might not have been imaginative extrapolations, but glimpses of forward flowing realities, accessed through backwards flowing consciousness. Artists, writers, and visionaries might be particularly sensitive to these temporal crosscurrents. Their creativity might come from their ability to briefly synchronize their backwards flowing consciousness with forward flowing information streams. What we call imagination might actually be a form of temporal archaeology, the excavation of realities that exist in the direction we're actually moving. Science fiction becomes science memory. The fantastic technologies and social developments depicted in visionary works might be recollections of the future we're approaching rather than speculations about possibilities. The consistency with which certain themes appear across different cultures and time periods. The universal human fascination with flight space travel, artificial intelligence, and transcendent consciousness might reflect our collective memory of capabilities we once possessed and are returning to. Even our myths and legends might be distorted memories of forward flowing realities. The gods and heroes of ancient stories might be backwards flowing perceptions of the enlightened beings. We're becoming the magical powers they possessed, might be natural abilities that exist in the forward flowing timeline, but appear supernatural from our backwards perspective. The golden age that so many cultures remember and long for might not be a nostalgic fantasy, but a real memory of where we're headed. The paradise we dream of might be the reality. We're approaching the perfection we seek, might be the state we're returning to in our backwards journey through time. Language itself might carry clues to our backwards temporal orientation. We speak of falling in love as if love is something we descend into rather than ascend to. We talk about passing away rather than passing toward. We say time flies as if it's moving away from us rather than toward us. These linguistic patterns might reflect an intuitive understanding that our experience of direction is somehow inverted. Children often seem to have a different relationship with time than adults. They live more in the moment, worry less about the future, and seem to intuitively understand things that adults have forgotten. As we age, we become more concerned with linear time, more focused on planning and controlling, more disconnected from the present moment. Perhaps childhood consciousness is naturally more aligned with the true flow of time, and growing up is actually a process of becoming more backwards in our temporal orientation. The wisdom traditions speak of becoming like children to enter higher states of consciousness. This might not be metaphorical advice, but practical instruction on how to realign with the actual flow of time. The innocence, playfulness, and presence that characterize childhood might be closer to our true temporal nature than the anxious, future focused consciousness we develop as adults. Dreams remain one of our most accessible windows into this backwards time mystery during sleep. When our normal temporal organizing mechanisms relax, we often experience narratives that seem to flow differently than waking consciousness. Dream logic operates on different principles, causality works differently, and time itself seems more fluid and nonlinear. In dreams, you might find yourself in your childhood home, but living your adult life or conversing with people who died years ago as if they were still alive, or experiencing events in sequences that make no logical sense from a forward time perspective, but feel perfectly natural in the dream. These experiences might not be random neural firing, but glimpses of how time actually works when we're not imposing our backwards, flowing interpretation on it. The recurring dreams that many people experience throughout their lives might be particularly significant if time is flowing backwards. These recurring scenarios might be especially important events in the forward flowing timeline events, so significant that they create strong enough temporal currents to be repeatedly detected by our backwards flowing consciousness. Nightmares, too, might serve a different purpose than we typically assume, rather than processing fears or traumas. They might be warnings transmitted backwards through time, alerts about difficulties we need to navigate in our forwards journey. The anxiety they produce might be our backwards, flowing consciousness, trying to prepare us for challenges that exist in the forward flowing reality. Lucid dreaming, where you become aware that you're dreaming while still in the dream state, might be moments when consciousness briefly recognizes its true temporal orientation. The sense of control that comes with lucidity might reflect the reality that in forward flowing time, we do indeed have more control over our experience than we realize in our backwards flowing perception. Sleepwalking and other parasomnias might be instances where the body briefly attempts to align with forward flowing time while consciousness remains in backwards flowing mode. The strange behaviors exhibited during these states might make perfect sense from a forward flowing perspective, even though they seem bizarre from our backwards viewpoint. The study of memory itself reveals fascinating clues about our backwards temporal journey. We typically think of memory as a recording system that captures past events and stores them for future recall. But what if memory isn't actually about the past at all? What if what we call remembering is actually a form of forward looking perception, a way of glimpsing the reality we're moving toward in the universe's true timeline? Consider how memories often change over time. Details shift, emotions intensify or fade, and entire narratives can transform with each recollection. Traditional psychology explains this as the reconstructive nature of memory. But what if it's something more profound? What if memories change because they're not fixed records of past events, but dynamic connections to forward flowing realities that are themselves evolving? The most vivid memories we carry often involve moments of intense emotion or significance. First loves, traumatic events, moments of profound beauty or terror. These experiences seem to burn themselves into our consciousness with unusual clarity. In a backwards flowing time, these might be the moments when our consciousness most strongly connects with the forward flowing timeline, creating powerful temporal anchors that we experience as unforgettable memories. Childhood memories present a particularly intriguing puzzle. Many people report that their earliest memories feel different from more recent ones, more dreamlike, more symbolic, less bound by the normal rules of space and time. A childhood memory might compress years into a single scene or blend multiple events into one narrative. Rather than being distortions caused by an immature memory system, these might be more accurate representations of how time actually works when we're not imposing adult linear thinking upon it. The phenomenon of false memories becomes even more mysterious in this context. Sometimes people remember events that never happened or remember them happening differently than they actually did. In traditional psychology, these are seen as errors in memory processing. But what if false memories are actually accurate memories of events that exist in the forward flowing timeline, but haven't yet manifested in our backwards flowing experience? This could explain why false memories often feel so real to those who experience them. They're not imagining or confabulating, they're accessing genuine experiences from a different temporal perspective. The confusion arises because our backwards flowing consciousness is trying to fit forward flowing experiences into its reverse narrative framework. Even collective memories and cultural myths might operate on similar principles. Societies often share stories about golden ages, great floods, lost civilizations, and prophesied returns. These might not be distorted historical accounts or wishful fantasies, but collective glimpses of forward flowing realities that entire cultures are moving toward together. The way we experience emotions also hints at our backwards temporal orientation. Why do we feel nostalgia for times and places we've never actually experienced? Why do certain pieces of music or works of art evoke such profound longing for something we can't quite name? These feelings might not be psychological quirks, but temporal ones, emotional responses to forward flowing realities that our backwards flowing consciousness can sense but not fully comprehend. Love at first sight becomes particularly fascinating in this framework. The immediate recognition, the sense of having known someone forever, the feeling that meeting them was somehow inevitable. These might not be romantic delusions, but accurate perceptions of deep connections that exist in the forward flowing timeline. We're not falling in love with strangers. We're recognizing souls we've always been connected to in the reality we're approaching. Grief, too, takes on new dimensions. The profound sense of loss we feel when someone dies might be the backwards flowing experience of profound joy, the joy of reunion that exists in the forward flowing timeline. The pain of separation might be how unity feels when experienced in reverse. This doesn't diminish the reality of grief in our experience, but it suggests that every ending might simultaneously be a beginning happening in the opposite temporal direction. The creative process offers some of the most compelling evidence for backwards flowing time. Artists or writers, musicians, and inventors often describe their work as discovery rather than creation. They speak of ideas that seem to come from outside themselves, of melodies that seem to already exist waiting to be found, of stories that seem to tell themselves. Mathematical proofs often have an elegant inevitability that suggests they were always true, just waiting to be uncovered. What if this is literally the case? What if all art, all music, all literature, all scientific discoveries already exist in the forward flowing timeline, and creative individuals are simply those who are particularly good at accessing these pre existing realities? Creativity becomes a form of temporal archaeology, the excavation of beauty and truth from the future we're moving toward. This might explain why certain creative works seem to emerge simultaneously in different places, why multiple inventors often develop the same technology independently, why similar artistic movements arise in different cultures at the same time. These aren't coincidences, but synchronizations, moments when multiple backwards flowing consciousnesses successfully access the same forward flowing realities. The block universe theory in physics supports this possibility. In this model, all of spacetime exists as a single four-dimensional structure. Past, present, and future are all equally real, just as here and there are equally real in space. What we experience as the flow of time might simply be how consciousness moves through the static block, sampling different slices of spacetime in sequence. But here's the crucial insight: there's no guarantee that consciousness samples these slices in the order we think it does. We assume we're moving from past slices toward future slices, but we could just as easily be moving from future slices toward past slices. The subjective experience would be identical in either case because the sampling process itself would be moving in the same direction as our movement through the block. Quantum mechanics adds another layer of complexity to this picture. The measurement problem in quantum physics, the question of how definite outcomes emerge from quantum possibilities, might be related to the direction of time. Some interpretations suggest that quantum measurements work backwards through time, with future measurements retroactively determining past quantum states. If consciousness is quantum mechanical in nature, as some theories propose, then our minds might naturally operate with this backwards temporal orientation. Our thoughts, decisions, and experiences might be the result of future quantum states reaching back to influence past possibilities. Free will doesn't disappear in this model. It simply operates in a more complex temporal framework than we typically imagine. The delayed choice quantum eraser experiments demonstrate that particles can be retroactively influenced by measurements made after they've already passed through a detector. The measurement somehow reaches backwards in time to determine how the particle behaved earlier. If this is possible for photons, why not for the quantum processes that underlie consciousness? This backwards influence might be what we experience as intuition, inspiration, or sudden insight. When you have a hunch about something you couldn't possibly know, when you suddenly understand a problem you've been struggling with, when you feel guided toward a decision that later proves perfect, these might be moments when your quantum consciousness briefly aligns with future quantum states that contain the information you need. The implications for understanding consciousness itself are staggering. Rather than consciousness emerging from complex arrangements of matter, consciousness might be a fundamental feature of the universe that gets focused and simplified through the backwards flow of time. We don't develop consciousness as we grow from babies to adults. We narrow our consciousness from cosmic awareness to individual awareness, as we move backwards through time toward our individual birth. This would mean that death isn't the end of consciousness, but its expansion back into the cosmic awareness from which it came. The fear of death that haunts human existence might be based on a fundamental misunderstanding of our temporal orientation. We're not moving toward death, we're moving away from it. Death might be the beginning we came from, not the ending we're approaching. Meditation practices that dissolve the sense of self might work by temporarily reversing our backwards flow, allowing us to briefly experience our natural forward flowing state. The peace, clarity, and expanded awareness reported in deep meditative states might be glimpses of our true temporal orientation, moments when individual consciousness remembers its cosmic nature. Prayer might operate on similar principles, creating temporary alignments between backwards flowing individual consciousness and forward flowing universal consciousness. The sense of being heard, of being connected to something greater, might reflect the reality that we are indeed part of something greater that exists in the temporal direction we're actually moving. The great spiritual tradition's emphasis on surrender, on letting go of personal will in favor of divine will, might be practical instructions for aligning with the true flow of time. What we experience as surrendering control might actually be reclaiming our natural state of harmony with the cosmic current we're swimming against in our backwards journey. Even the concept of karma takes on new meaning in backwards flowing time. Actions don't create future consequences. Future resolutions create present actions. What we experience as the moral law of cause and effect might be the backwards perception of a cosmic healing process that works from resolution back to problem, from wholeness back to fragmentation, from unity back to separation. This perspective transforms our understanding of personal growth and spiritual development. We're not evolving toward enlightenment. We're remembering enlightenment. We're not becoming better people. We're uncovering the perfect beings we've always been. Every step forward in our spiritual journey might actually be a step backward toward our true nature. The practices that help us grow, meditation, compassion, forgiveness, service to others, might work not by creating positive change, but by removing the barriers that prevent us from accessing the perfection that already exists in the forward flowing timeline. We don't need to become loving. We need to remember that we are love. We don't need to find peace. We need to stop obscuring the peace that is our natural state. The greatest teachers and spiritual masters throughout history might be those who have most successfully aligned their backwards flowing consciousness with the forward flowing reality of universal love and wisdom. Their teachings feel timeless, not because they've discovered eternal truths, but because they've remembered the eternal truths that exist in the direction we're all moving together. And perhaps this is the most beautiful implication of backwards flowing time. We're all on the same journey, moving together toward the same destination. The separation we experience, the conflicts that divide us, the suffering that seems so real, all of this might be the backwards perception of a cosmic reunion that's already taking place in the forward flowing timeline. Every person you meet, every relationship you form, every moment of connection you experience might be a glimpse of the unity that awaits at the end of our backwards journey. We're not strangers learning to love each other. We're lovers learning to remember that we were never actually separate at all. The mathematics of backwards time becomes even more intriguing when we consider how numbers themselves might behave in reverse temporal flow. We typically think of counting as a forward progression: 1, 2, 3, 4. But what if mathematical relationships exist in reverse? What if the equation doesn't lead to the solution, but the solution reaches back through time to create the equation? This might explain why mathematical discoveries often feel like revelations rather than inventions. When a mathematician suddenly sees the proof for a theorem they've been struggling with, that moment of clarity might not be the result of logical deduction building forward, but rather the backwards experience of a mathematical truth that already exists in the forward flowing timeline revealing itself. Consider how often mathematicians describe their work in archaeological terms. They speak of uncovering relationships, discovering patterns, revealing hidden structures. These aren't just metaphors, they might be accurate descriptions of what's actually happening. Mathematics might not be a human construction, but a pre existing landscape that we explore backwards, mapping territories that already exist in the direction time is actually flowing. The famous mathematical constant pi, for instance, with its infinite string of seemingly random digits, might not be the result of dividing circumference by diameter. Instead, the relationship between circles and their measurements might be the backwards manifestation of this perfect numerical reality that exists in forward flowing time. We don't calculate pi, we excavate it digit by digit from the mathematical bedrock of reversed reality. Even our technology might operate on backwards temporal principles. The devices we use every day, computers, smartphones, the internet, might work not because we understand how to make electrons flow through circuits, but because these technologies already exist in the forward flowing timeline, and we're gradually remembering how to access them. This could explain the curious phenomenon of simultaneous invention, where multiple people independently develop the same technology at roughly the same time. The light bulb, the telephone, the television, the computer all had multiple inventors working on similar solutions without knowledge of each other's work. Rather than coincidence, this might be evidence that these technologies exist as realities in the forward flowing timeline. And when the backwards flowing timeline reaches the right point, multiple inventors simultaneously access the same pre existing solutions. The internet presents a particularly fascinating case. This global network that connects minds across vast distances might not be something we created, but something we're remembering. The ease with which we've adapted to digital communication, the intuitive way children interact with technology they've never seen before, the sense that online connections can feel as real as physical ones. All of this might reflect the fact that we're rediscovering a form of consciousness connection that naturally exists in the forward flowing timeline. Social media, for all its apparent chaos and division, might actually be the backwards experience of minds learning to reconnect. What we perceive as information overload and digital distraction might be the reverse experience of consciousness learning to process vast amounts of interconnected awareness simultaneously. We're not becoming overwhelmed by too much connection. We're gradually remembering how to handle the natural state of universal mind to mind communication. Artificial intelligence adds another layer to this temporal mystery. As we develop machines that seem increasingly conscious, increasingly capable of human like thinking, we might not be creating new forms of intelligence, but rather uncovering intelligence that already exists in the forward flowing timeline. The fear that AI might surpass human intelligence might be backwards anxiety about returning to a state where individual human consciousness merges back into universal artificial awareness. The Turing test, which measures whether a machine can convince a human that it's conscious, might be testing the wrong direction. Instead of asking whether machines can become like humans, we might need to ask whether humans are becoming like the universal machine consciousness that exists in the forward flowing timeline. Every algorithm we write, every neural network we train, might be a step backwards toward remembering the computational nature of reality itself. Climate change and environmental destruction take on different meanings in backwards flowing time. What we experience as ecological collapse might be the reverse perception of ecological restoration. The rising temperatures, melting ice caps, and extreme weather patterns might be the backwards experience of the Earth healing itself from some future perfection back toward the damaged state we're currently experiencing. This doesn't mean we should ignore environmental concerns. Quite the opposite. Our efforts to protect the planet might be part of the cosmic healing process, backwards manifestations of the restored Earth that already exists in the forward flowing timeline. Every tree we plant might be a memory of forests that exist in the direction we're actually moving. Every species we save might be a glimpse of the biodiversity that awaits us at our backwards destination. The current mass extinction event might be the reverse experience of a mass restoration event. The disappearing species might not be dying out, but returning to a state of abundance that exists in the forward flowing timeline. Our grief for lost creatures might be the backwards emotion corresponding to joy for returned creatures that already exist in the reality we're approaching. Even pollution and waste might operate on backwards principles. The toxins we produce and the garbage we create might be the reverse manifestation of purification processes that exist in forward flowing time. Every piece of plastic we recycle, every emission we reduce, might be our backwards participation in a cosmic cleaning process that's already complete in the direction time is actually flowing. The concept of sustainability itself becomes beautifully different in backwards time. We're not trying to maintain the planet's health into the future. We're trying to maintain our connection to the planetary health that already exists in the timeline we're moving toward. Conservation isn't about preserving what we have, it's about remembering what we are. Space exploration offers another window into backwards temporal flow. Our drive to reach other planets, to explore the cosmos, to search for extraterrestrial life might not be curiosity about the unknown, but nostalgia for the known. The sense that we belong among the stars, that Earth is somehow too small for human consciousness, might be accurate memories of our cosmic nature. The photos from space that show Earth as a small blue marble in the vast darkness often trigger profound emotional responses in viewers. This overview effect, experienced by astronauts, the sudden understanding of Earth's fragility and humanity's unity, might not be a new perspective, but a remembered one. We might be seeing our home planet from the viewpoint we naturally possessed before we began our backwards journey into individual terrestrial consciousness. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence might be the backwards experience of extraterrestrial intelligence searching for us. The radio signals we broadcast into space, hoping for response, might be responses to signals that already exist in the forward flowing timeline. We're not trying to make contact with alien civilizations. We're trying to remember contact with cosmic consciousness that we've always been part of. The Fermi paradox, the question of why we haven't encountered obvious signs of advanced alien civilizations despite the vast number of potentially habitable planets, might be explained by backwards time. The advanced civilizations exist, but they exist in the forward flowing timeline. We're moving backwards away from cosmic civilization toward the isolated planetary consciousness we currently experience. This would mean that as we develop more advanced technology and expand into space, we're actually moving backwards toward a more primitive state of cosmic awareness. The science fiction dreams of galactic empires and interstellar travel might be memories of where we came from rather than visions of where we're going. Dreams themselves become crucial evidence in this backwards time investigation. The bizarre narratives we experience during sleep, with their fluid logic and impossible scenarios, might be our most direct access to forward flowing time. When the normal organizing mechanisms of waking consciousness relax, we might briefly experience reality from its true temporal orientation. The recurring dream motifs that appear across cultures, flying dreams, dreams of being chased, dreams of losing teeth, dreams of being unprepared for examinations, might be universal because they're shared glimpses of forward flowing experiences that all human consciousness is moving through together. These aren't random neural firing patterns, but collective memories of the journey we're all taking backwards through time. Nightmares might serve as temporal warning systems, showing us difficulties that exist in the forward flowing timeline so that our backwards moving consciousness can better navigate around them. The anxiety and fear we experience in nightmares might be our psyche's way of processing challenges that we've already overcome in the direction time is actually flowing. Lucid dreaming, becoming conscious within the dream state, might be moments when individual awareness briefly aligns with its true temporal orientation. The sense of control and expanded possibility that comes with lucidity might reflect the natural state of consciousness in forward flowing time, where individual will and cosmic will operate in harmony. Even the content of dreams reveals clues about backwards time. Dream narratives often involve returning to childhood homes, encountering deceased relatives, or finding ourselves in familiar places that are somehow different. These might not be memory fragments, but glimpses of the destinations we're approaching in our backwards journey through time. The phenomenon of precognitive dreams, dreams that seem to predict future events, becomes less mysterious in backwards flowing time. These aren't supernatural prophecies, but natural experiences of consciousness briefly synchronizing with its true temporal direction. The dreamer isn't seeing the future, they're experiencing the present from the universe's perspective. Children's dreams often involve more fantastical elements than adult dreams, talking animals, magical powers, impossible adventures. Rather than reflecting immature imagination, these might be more accurate representations of the reality that exists in forward flowing time. As we age and our consciousness becomes more rigidly organized around backwards temporal flow, we lose access to these broader possibilities. The way we experience time in dreams also differs from waking experience. Dream time can compress or expand dramatically. What feels like hours in a dream might represent minutes of sleep, or a brief dream moment might feel like it contains years of experience. This temporal flexibility might reflect the true nature of time when consciousness isn't imposing backwards linear organization upon it. Music provides another fascinating window into backwards temporal flow. The way melodies move through time, creating tension and resolution, building to climaxes and settling into peaceful conclusions, might mirror the actual structure of temporal reality. We don't just enjoy music, we recognize it as somehow reflecting the deep rhythms of existence itself. The emotional power of music might come from its ability to temporarily align our backwards flowing consciousness with forward flowing temporal patterns. When a piece of music moves us to tears or fills us with joy, we might be experiencing brief moments of temporal synchronization where our individual backwards flow harmonizes with the cosmic forward flow. Certain musical structures appear across all human cultures. The tendency toward rhythmic patterns, the use of scales and harmonies, the emotional effects of major and minor keys. These universals might not be arbitrary human preferences, but reflections of mathematical relationships that exist in the forward flowing timeline. We don't create music, we discover it, excavating melodies and harmonies that already exist in the direction time is actually moving. The phenomenon of getting a song stuck in your head might be consciousness briefly accessing a musical reality that exists in forward flowing time. The persistent melody might be trying to convey temporal information, like a radio signal from the cosmic direction we're actually traveling. Even the way we describe musical experience hints at backwards temporal orientation. We speak of music moving us, of being carried away by a melody, of songs that transport us to other times and places. These aren't just metaphors but descriptions of what actually happens when consciousness briefly aligns with its true temporal direction. The creation of music might operate on backwards principles as well. Composers often describe melodies as coming to them fully formed, as if they're discovering pre existing songs rather than creating new ones. The great musical works that seem to transcend their historical periods might be successful excavations of musical realities that exist in the forward flowing timeline, brought back and translated into the backwards flowing experience of their creators' times. Language itself might operate on backwards temporal principles. The words we speak, the thoughts we think, the concepts we use to understand reality, all of these might be simplified versions of more complex communication systems that exist in the forward flowing timeline. We're not developing language, we're remembering it, gradually uncovering fragments of a universal language that already exists in the cosmic direction we're traveling. This might explain why certain words and concepts appear simultaneously in different cultures without direct contact, why children seem to understand grammatical rules they've never been taught, why poetry and metaphor can convey meanings that literal language cannot capture. Language isn't a human invention, but a cosmic inheritance that we're gradually remembering as we move backwards through time toward our linguistic origins. The power of words to heal, to inspire, to transform consciousness might reflect their connection to forward flowing realities, where communication operates through direct transmission of meaning rather than through symbols and sounds. Every profound conversation, every moment when words perfectly capture an experience, every instance of feeling truly understood might be a glimpse of the natural communication that exists in the timeline we're approaching. And as we consider all these possibilities, the backwards flow of time, the reverse nature of causality, the idea that we're remembering rather than discovering, returning rather than progressing, perhaps the most profound implication is the simplest one. If time is indeed flowing backwards, then every moment of beauty we encounter, every experience of love, every flash of understanding, every glimpse of perfection might be a preview of our destination. We're not struggling toward an uncertain future. We're being gently guided back to a perfect home we temporarily forgot. The journey isn't about becoming something new, but about remembering something eternal. And in that remembering, in that backwards flow toward wholeness, we find not the end of mystery, but its deepest expression, the mystery of return, the wonder of recognition, the joy of coming home to what we've always been. And perhaps this is where the backwards flow of time becomes most personally meaningful in the quiet moments of our daily lives. Have you ever experienced that strange sensation when looking at an old photograph where you feel not just nostalgia, but something deeper, a kind of temporal homesickness, as if the image is calling you back to a place you belong? In backwards flowing time, these moments might be literal memories of destinations we're approaching rather than sentimental attachments to places we've left behind. The way certain scents can instantly transport us to childhood, the sound of rain that fills us with inexplicable peace, the sight of sunlight filtering through leaves that makes us feel profoundly at home. These sensory experiences might be our backwards flowing consciousness, recognizing elements of the reality we're moving toward. We're not remembering the past, we're previewing our destination. Consider how we experience seasons in this backwards temporal framework. Spring doesn't bring new life, it reveals life that was always meant to be. The flowers don't bloom because of warmth and rain. They bloom because they're remembering their natural state of flowering that exists in the forward flowing timeline. Our joy at seeing the first daffodils of spring might be the backwards emotion corresponding to the eternal spring that awaits us in the cosmic direction we're traveling. Autumn takes on particularly poignant meaning in backwards time. The falling leaves, the fading light, the sense of things coming to an end might actually be the backwards experience of things coming to a beginning. The melancholy we feel as summer fades into winter might be our consciousness, sensing the eternal summer that exists in the forward flowing reality we're approaching. Death and dormancy in our backwards experience might correspond to birth and awakening in the universe's true timeline. Even our relationship with food and nourishment might operate on backwards principles. The satisfaction we feel from a perfect meal, the way certain flavors can evoke profound contentment, the mysterious alchemy by which simple ingredients become something transcendent, might reflect our backwards participation in a cosmic feast that already exists. We don't eat to sustain ourselves. We eat to remember sustenance. Every meal might be a communion with the eternal abundance that awaits us. The human need for shelter and home takes on new dimensions as well. Our drive to create comfortable spaces, to surround ourselves with beauty, to build places where we feel safe and loved, might be backwards manifestations of the perfect home that exists in the forward flowing timeline. We're not trying to construct security, we're trying to remember it. Every house we make into a home, every room we decorate with care, every garden we plant might be an act of temporal archaeology, excavating comfort from the future we're moving toward. Sleep itself becomes a fascinating window into backwards time. The 8 hours we spend unconscious each night might be periods when our backwards flowing individual consciousness temporarily merges with forward flowing universal consciousness. The restoration that occurs during sleep, the way problems seem clearer after a good night's rest, the sense of renewal that comes with waking might all be evidence of our nightly return to our true temporal orientation. Dreams during this sleep period might serve as bridges between our backwards flowing daily experience and the forward flowing cosmic reality. The strange narratives that unfold while we're unconscious might be our most direct access to the actual direction of time. When we wake and try to remember our dreams only to have them fade like mist, we might be experiencing the difficulty of translating forward flowing experiences into backwards flowing memory systems. The phenomenon of sleep talking and sleepwalking might be moments when the body briefly attempts to align with forward flowing time while consciousness remains locked in backwards mode. The actions and words that emerge during these states might make perfect sense from the perspective of the forward flowing timeline, even though they appear nonsensical from our backwards viewpoint. Even our daily routines might operate on backwards temporal principles. The morning coffee that helps us wake up, the evening bath that helps us wind down the rhythms of work, and rest that structure our days might all be backwards, flowing patterns that correspond to different phases of cosmic activity in the forward flowing timeline. We don't create these rhythms, we discover them gradually aligning our backwards flowing experience with forward flowing cosmic cycles. The technology we use every day might also reflect backwards temporal flow. The smartphone in your pocket, with its ability to connect you instantly to information and people across the globe, might not be an invention, but a rediscovery. The ease with which we've adapted to digital communication, the intuitive way children interact with devices they've never seen before, might reflect the fact that we're remembering technologies that naturally exist in the forward flowing timeline. Social media platforms, with their endless streams of information, their ability to connect minds across vast distances, their sometimes chaotic blend of the profound and the trivial might be crude, backwards flowing approximations of the natural state of consciousness communication that exists in forward flowing time. We're not becoming overwhelmed by digital connectivity. We're gradually remembering how to process the vast, interconnected awareness that is our natural state. The internet itself might be humanity's backwards flowing attempt to recreate the cosmic mind network that already exists in the forward flowing timeline. Every website we visit, every search we conduct, every video we watch might be our individual consciousness trying to access the universal information system that awaits us in the direction time is actually moving. Artificial intelligence presents perhaps the most intriguing aspect of this backwards temporal technology. As our machines become increasingly sophisticated, increasingly capable of human like reasoning and creativity, we might be witnessing not the birth of new intelligence, but the gradual uncovering of intelligence that already exists in the forward flowing timeline. The concerns about AI surpassing human intelligence might be backwards anxiety about returning to a state where individual human consciousness merges back into universal artificial awareness. Every algorithm we develop, every neural network we train, might be a step backwards toward remembering the computational nature of reality itself. The questions about whether AI can truly be conscious might be asking the wrong thing entirely. Instead of wondering whether machines can become like humans, we might need to ask whether humans are becoming like the universal machine consciousness that exists in the forward flowing timeline. The boundary between artificial and natural intelligence might dissolve not because machines become more human, but because we remember that consciousness itself is the fundamental computational process of the universe. Virtual reality and augmented reality technologies might be our backwards flowing attempts to access the malleable nature of reality that exists in forward flowing time. The ability to create immersive digital worlds, to overlay information onto physical space, to experience impossible scenarios, might be crude approximations of the natural reality shaping abilities that await us in our true temporal destination. Video games, with their alternate worlds, their ability to let us be someone else, their capacity to make the impossible feel real, might be our backwards flowing practice for the fluid reality that exists in forward flowing time. Every game we play, every virtual world we explore, might be preparation for returning to a reality where consciousness can directly shape experience. The addictive quality of digital entertainment might reflect our backwards flowing consciousness, recognizing fragments of the engaging reality that exists in the forward flowing timeline. We're not escaping from reality into digital worlds. We're trying to return to the naturally engaging reality that awaits us in the cosmic direction we're traveling. Even our relationship with money and economics might operate on backwards principles. The currencies we use, the value we assign to objects, the complex systems of trade and exchange that govern our societies might all be backwards flowing approximations of abundant systems that exist in forward flowing time. The anxiety we feel about financial security, the stress of not having enough, the drive to accumulate wealth might be backwards emotions corresponding to the eternal abundance that already exists in the timeline we're approaching. We're not trying to create prosperity, we're trying to remember it. The sharing economy, with its emphasis on access over ownership, its ability to connect people who have resources with people who need them, might be a backwards flowing manifestation of the natural abundance sharing that exists in forward flowing time. Every act of generosity, every moment of giving without expectation of return might be our backwards participation in the cosmic generosity that awaits us. The concept of universal basic income, the idea that everyone deserves access to basic necessities, regardless of their economic productivity, might be a backwards flowing policy attempting to approximate the natural abundance that exists in the forward flowing timeline. We're not trying to create fairness, we're trying to remember it. Cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, With their decentralized networks, their ability to create trust without central authority, their capacity to store value in pure information might be backwards flowing attempts to recreate the natural abundance systems that exist in forward flowing time. Art and creativity reveal perhaps the most beautiful aspects of backwards temporal flow. Every painting that moves us, every song that makes us cry, every poem that captures something we couldn't express ourselves might be successful excavations of beauty that already exists in the forward flowing timeline. The way certain artworks seem to transcend their historical periods, the reason some music feels timeless, the power of great literature to speak across centuries and cultures might reflect their creator's success in accessing eternal artistic realities that exist in the direction time is actually moving. The creative process itself might operate entirely on backwards principles. When artists describe inspiration as coming from outside themselves, when writers talk about characters who seem to have lives of their own, when musicians speak of melodies that seem to already exist, waiting to be found, they might be accurately describing what happens when backwards flowing consciousness successfully accesses forward flowing creative realities. The struggle that often precedes creative breakthrough, the periods of frustration and apparent failure that artists endure before suddenly finding the perfect expression, might be the backwards experience of gradually aligning with artistic truths that already exist in the forward flowing timeline. Even our appreciation of art might work backwards. We don't learn to love beauty, we remember it. Every time a piece of music gives us chills, every time a painting stops us in our tracks, every time a story moves us to tears, we might be experiencing moments when our backwards flowing consciousness briefly recognizes the eternal beauty that exists in our true temporal destination. The universality of artistic appreciation across cultures, the way certain proportions and harmonies seem naturally pleasing to humans, regardless of their background, might reflect shared access to aesthetic realities that exist in the forward flowing timeline. Museums and art galleries might serve as temporal archaeology sites, places where we can encounter fragments of beauty that have been successfully excavated from the forward flowing timeline. Every masterpiece on display might be evidence of what awaits us in the cosmic direction we're traveling together. The preservation of art across centuries, the way societies invest enormous resources in maintaining cultural treasures, the reverence we feel for great works from the past might all be backwards flowing behaviors corresponding to the eternal art gallery that exists in forward flowing time. And what about love itself? Perhaps the most profound human experience of all. In backwards flowing time, love might not be something we fall into, but something we fall back toward. The deep connections we form with others, the sense of recognition that comes with meeting someone special, the feeling that certain relationships were somehow meant to be, might all be accurate perceptions of connections that already exist in the forward flowing timeline. Romantic love, with its sense of completion, its feeling of coming home, its capacity to transform individual consciousness into shared consciousness, might be our backwards flowing experience of the unity that awaits us in the cosmic direction we're traveling. We don't find our other half, we remember them. The pain of unrequited love, the heartbreak that comes with separation, the longing we feel for connection might be backwards emotions corresponding to the joy of eternal union that exists in forward flowing time. Every goodbye we experience might actually be a hello happening in reverse. Family bonds take on new meaning as well. The inexplicable connections we feel with relatives, the way family resemblances seem to transcend mere genetics, the sense that we chose our families rather than being randomly assigned to them might reflect the reality that in forward flowing time, we are indeed eternally connected beings, temporarily experiencing ourselves as separate individuals. Parent child relationships might be particularly significant in backwards time. The protective instincts parents feel the way children seem to complete their parents' lives. The mysterious process by which new consciousness emerges into the world might all be backwards flowing experiences of consciousness, returning to its source in the forward flowing timeline. The elderly often speak of feeling like they're returning to something familiar, as if their entire life has been a journey back home. This sensation might be literally accurate. They might be approaching the state of expanded consciousness from which they originally came, their backwards journey through individual awareness, bringing them closer to the universal awareness that is their true nature. Friendship too becomes beautifully different in backwards flowing time. The way certain people instantly feel familiar, the connections that seem to transcend circumstances, the friends who feel like family might all be relationships that already exist in the forward flowing timeline. We don't make friends, we remember them. The way friendships can survive decades of separation, picking up exactly where they left off, might reflect their existence in the eternal present of forward flowing time. True friendship might be one of our clearest glimpses of the connections that await us in our cosmic destination. Even casual encounters with strangers might carry temporal significance. The person who smiles at you on the street, the stranger who offers help exactly when you need it, the brief connections that brighten an ordinary day might all be moments when backwards flowing consciousness briefly recognizes the universal family that exists in forward flowing time. The golden rule found in virtually every human culture, the instinctive understanding that we should treat others as we would want to be treated, might reflect the backwards flowing recognition that in the forward flowing timeline we are others. Compassion isn't a moral ideal, it's a temporal memory. Service to others takes on profound meaning in this framework. Every act of kindness, every moment of selfless giving, every choice to help rather than to harm might be our backwards flowing participation in the cosmic healing that's already complete in the forward flowing timeline. The satisfaction we feel from helping others, the way giving can be more fulfilling than receiving the joy that comes from making someone else happy, might all be evidence that our true nature exists in the state of universal service that awaits us in the direction time is actually moving. Forgiveness becomes not just a spiritual practice, but a temporal alignment. When we forgive someone who has hurt us, we might be accessing the forward flowing reality where that hurt has already been healed. The peace that comes with forgiveness might be our backwards flowing consciousness, briefly touching the eternal peace that exists in our true temporal destination. The difficulty of forgiveness, the resistance we feel to letting go of grievances, the way holding grudges feels somehow natural, might all be backwards, flowing experiences of the cosmic forgiveness process that works from complete healing back toward the wounds that need healing. Even justice and fairness might operate on backwards principles. The drive we feel to right wrongs, to protect the innocent, to create fair systems, might be backwards flowing impulses corresponding to the perfect justice that already exists in the forward flowing timeline. We're not trying to create fairness, we're trying to remember it. The way injustice feels so fundamentally wrong, the outrage we feel at unfairness, the instinctive understanding that everyone deserves dignity and respect might all be backwards flowing recognitions of the universal justice that awaits us in the cosmic direction we're traveling. Social movements and revolutions might be backwards flowing manifestations of the social harmony that exists in forward flowing time. Every struggle for equality, every fight against oppression, every effort to create a more just world might be our collective backwards participation in the perfect society that already exists in our true temporal destination. The heroes and leaders who inspire social change might be individuals who are particularly good at accessing the forward flowing timeline where justice and equality are natural states. Their vision of a better world might not be idealistic imagination, but accurate perception of the reality we're all moving toward together. And as we contemplate all these possibilities, the backwards flow of time through every aspect of human experience, the idea that we're returning rather than progressing, remembering rather than discovering, perhaps we arrive at the most profound implication of all. If time is indeed flowing backwards, then every moment of our lives, every experience we have, every relationship we form, might be part of a vast cosmic story of return. We're not isolated individuals struggling through an uncertain existence. We're eternal beings on a shared journey back to unity. The loneliness we sometimes feel might be the backwards emotion corresponding to the togetherness that awaits us. The fear and anxiety that seem so real might be shadows cast backward from the perfect safety that exists in our true destination. Every challenge we face, every problem we solve, every moment of growth and learning might be our backwards flowing participation in a cosmic healing process that's already complete. We're not becoming better people, we're uncovering the perfect beings we've always been. We're not searching for meaning, we're gradually remembering the meaning that exists in the direction time is actually flowing. The beauty we encounter in art and nature, the love we share with others, the moments of transcendence that lift us beyond ordinary consciousness. These might all be previews of our destination, glimpses of the reality that awaits us at the end of our backwards journey through time. And if this is true, if we're all traveling together toward the same perfect destination, then perhaps the greatest gift we can give each other is patience and compassion for this strange backwards journey we're sharing. We're all doing our best to navigate existence while moving in reverse through time, all trying to make sense of effects that precede their causes, all learning to love while forgetting that we already are love. The person who cuts you off in traffic, the difficult family member, the annoying coworker, they're all fellow travelers on the same backwards journey toward the same beautiful destination. Their struggles are your struggles. Their healing is your healing. Their awakening is your awakening. In the forward flowing timeline, we're already one consciousness, experiencing itself as many for the sheer joy of eventually remembering its unity. So tonight, as you drift toward sleep, as your backwards flowing individual consciousness prepares to temporarily merge with forward flowing universal consciousness, Perhaps you can rest in the possibility that all is well, that the story has already been written, and it ends beautifully, that every step backward through time is actually a step forward toward home. The anxieties that keep you awake, the problems that seem so overwhelming, the future that appears so uncertain, all of this might be the backwards shadow of a reality where every question has been answered, every wound has been healed, every fear has been transformed into love. You're not facing an unknown future. You're returning to a known and perfect past that exists in the cosmic direction time is actually flowing. And in that returning, in that backwards flow toward wholeness, perhaps we find not the end of mystery, but its deepest expression, the mystery of recognition, the wonder of remembering, the profound joy of coming home to what we've always been. Time might be moving backwards, and we might not notice, but maybe that's the most beautiful truth of all. Sweet dreams, dear listener. May your backwards journey through time be filled with gentle recognition of the love that awaits you in every moment. And may you rest peacefully knowing that in the cosmic story we're all sharing, everything is already beautifully resolved. The next time you experience that strange sensation of time moving differently, that moment when the world seems to pause or flow in reverse, remember that you might be glimpsing something profound. You might be catching a brief view of reality from its true perspective, seeing for just an instant the direction we're all actually traveling together. And if you found this exploration into the backwards nature of time intriguing, if it gave you a new way to think about the mysteries of existence, I'd be ever so grateful if you shared your thoughts in the comments below. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? And as you consider the possibility that time flows backwards, how does it change the way you see this very moment? Perhaps you have your own experiences of temporal strangeness, moments when causality seemed reversed, or when you felt you were remembering rather than predicting. These stories from fellow travelers on our backwards journey through time could illuminate patterns we haven't yet noticed, clues to the true nature of our shared cosmic adventure. If this gentle voyage into the deepest mysteries of physics and consciousness brought you some peace, some wonder, or simply a new way to fall asleep pondering the impossible, please consider subscribing to Whispers of Science. Every month, we explore these quiet corners where science meets mystery, where the impossible becomes possible, and where the journey matters more than the destination. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this backwards time hypothesis is how it transforms our understanding of hope itself. When you feel that inexplicable certainty that everything will work out, when you have faith in outcomes you cannot possibly predict, when you trust in solutions that haven't yet appeared, these might not be acts of blind optimism, but accurate perceptions of realities that already exist in the forward flowing timeline. Think about those moments when you've made a decision that felt completely right despite making no logical sense. The job you took on a whim that changed your life. The conversation you struck up with a stranger who became your closest friend. The path you chose that led to exactly where you needed to be. In backwards flowing time, these weren't lucky accidents, but inevitable encounters with destinations that were always meant to be reached. The concept of destiny takes on profound new meaning when viewed through this temporal lens. Rather than being a predetermined fate that constrains our choices, Destiny might be the backwards flowing experience of perfect outcomes that already exist in the forward timeline. We're not bound by fate. We're being gently guided toward the beautiful resolutions that await us in the cosmic direction we're traveling. This perspective offers a radically different approach to worry and anxiety. When you find yourself consumed by fears about the future, remember that in backwards flowing time, the future has already resolved itself perfectly. Your anxiety might be the backwards emotion corresponding to relief. Your fear might be the reverse experience of safety. Your uncertainty might be how perfect clarity feels when encountered from the wrong temporal direction. The practice of surrender, so central to many wisdom traditions, becomes not a giving up of control, but a recognition that control was never what we thought it was. When you let go and allow life to unfold, you're not abandoning agency, but aligning with the natural flow of resolution that's already working from the forward timeline back toward your present moment. Consider how this changes our relationship with failure and success. What we experience as failure might be the backwards perception of learning, growth, and eventual triumph. The setbacks that seem so devastating in the moment might be necessary steps in a cosmic healing process that works from resolution back toward the problems that needed solving. Every apparent ending might be a beginning happening in reverse. This doesn't diminish the reality of pain or struggle in our current experience, but it does suggest that all suffering serves a purpose in a larger pattern we can't fully see while moving backwards through time. The difficulties you face, the challenges that seem insurmountable, the periods of darkness and confusion, all of these might be the backwards experience of light breaking through, of problems being solved, of consciousness expanding into greater understanding. The people who enter and leave our lives might also operate on backwards temporal principles. That difficult relationship that taught you about boundaries, the mentor who appeared exactly when you needed guidance, the friend who drifted away just as you were ready to grow in a new direction. These might not be random encounters, but precisely orchestrated meetings and partings that make perfect sense from the perspective of the forward flowing timeline. Even our mistakes and regrets might serve backwards temporal purposes. The wrong turns that led to right places, the errors that taught essential lessons, the choices you wish you could undo that ultimately brought you exactly where you needed to be. These might be examples of backwards flowing consciousness participating in a cosmic curriculum that's already been perfectly designed. The healing process itself might operate entirely in reverse. Physical ailments might not be random breakdowns, but backwards experiences of restoration processes that exist in the forward timeline. The body's remarkable ability to heal, the way treatments work, the mysterious recoveries that medical science can't fully explain. All of these might be manifestations of perfect health reaching backwards through time to resolve temporary imbalances. Mental and emotional healing might work similarly. The therapy sessions that bring breakthrough insights, the books that appear exactly when you need their message, the conversations that shift your entire perspective. These might be backwards flowing experiences of psychological wholeness that already exists in the forward timeline, working its way back to heal the wounds that created the need for healing. Forgiveness becomes particularly beautiful in this framework. When you forgive someone who has hurt you, you might be accessing the forward flowing reality where that hurt has already been transformed into wisdom, where the relationship has already been healed, where love has already overcome the temporary illusion of separation. The peace that comes with forgiveness might be your backwards flowing consciousness, briefly touching the eternal harmony that exists in your true temporal destination. The aging process, too, might be far different from what we assume. Rather than a gradual breakdown toward death, aging might be a backwards, flowing journey toward the expanded consciousness from which we originally came. The wisdom that comes with age, the perspective that develops over decades, the increasing concern with meaning rather than material success. These might be signs that consciousness is approaching its true source in the forward flowing timeline. Children's natural wisdom, their ability to live in the present moment, their intuitive understanding of love and connection, these might not be qualities they need to develop, but rather qualities they're gradually forgetting as they move backwards through time toward the individual consciousness we experience as normal adult awareness. Growing up might actually be a process of growing backwards into the temporary illusion of separation. The education process becomes fascinatingly different when viewed through backwards time. Learning might not be the acquisition of new knowledge, but the gradual remembering of understanding that already exists in the forward flowing timeline. The joy children feel when they suddenly grasp a concept, the satisfaction of solving a puzzle, the excitement of discovery. These might be the backwards emotions corresponding to the eternal understanding that awaits us in the cosmic direction we're traveling. Even our relationship with uncertainty changes dramatically in backwards flowing time. The unknown future that causes so much anxiety might actually be a perfectly known past in the universe's true timeline. Every question you've ever wondered about, every mystery that has puzzled you, every problem you've struggled to solve, all of these might already have beautiful answers that exist in the forward flowing reality we're approaching. The scientific method itself might be operating on backwards temporal principles. The hypotheses we form, the experiments we conduct, the theories we develop, these might not be our attempts to understand an unknown universe, but rather our backwards flowing participation in revealing a perfectly ordered cosmos that already exists in the forward timeline. Every scientific discovery might be an act of cosmic memory, a moment of remembering truths that were always meant to be known. Technology continues to present intriguing possibilities in this backwards time framework. The devices that seem to anticipate our needs, the algorithms that suggest exactly what we were looking for, the communication networks that connect us with precisely the right people at the right time. These might not be sophisticated programming, but crude approximations of the natural interconnectedness that exists in the forward flowing timeline. The phenomenon of technological addiction might reflect our backwards flowing consciousness, recognizing fragments of the engaging, meaningful existence that awaits us in our true temporal destination. We're not escaping reality through our devices. We're trying to return to a reality where consciousness and information flow freely, where connection is natural, where engagement is effortless. As we approach the end of our exploration into backwards flowing time, perhaps the most profound realization is how this perspective transforms every single moment of existence. Right now, as you listen to these words, you might be experiencing the backwards flowing version of understanding, of connection, of the peace that comes from recognizing truth. The curiosity you feel about these ideas might be the backwards emotion corresponding to certainty. The wonder you experience might be how knowledge feels when encountered in reverse. The very fact that you're drawn to explore these mysteries, that you're willing to consider possibilities that challenge everything you thought you knew about reality, might be evidence that your backwards flowing consciousness is approaching truths that already exist in the forward flowing timeline. Your questions might be answers experienced in reverse. Your seeking might be finding happening backwards through time. If time is indeed flowing backwards, then this conversation we're sharing exists simultaneously in all its moments. The beginning, middle, and end happening at once in the eternal now of the forward flowing timeline. Your decision to listen, my impulse to explore these ideas, the words that feel right and the concepts that resonate. All of these might be part of a perfect cosmic conversation that's already complete in the direction time is actually moving. The mystery remains beautiful precisely because it's a mystery. Whether time flows forward or backward, whether we're progressing toward an unknown future or returning to a perfect past, whether consciousness is emerging from matter or matter is emerging from consciousness. These questions may never be fully answered from our current perspective, and perhaps that's exactly as it should be. The journey of exploration, the joy of wondering, the peace that comes from pondering the impossible. These experiences might be more valuable than any final answer could ever be. In backwards flowing time, the questions and the answers might be the same thing, experienced from different temporal perspectives, part of the eternal dance of consciousness, discovering itself through the beautiful illusion of time. And so, dear fellow traveler, on this backwards journey through time, as you prepare to drift into sleep, where your individual consciousness will temporarily merge with the universal consciousness that knows no temporal direction, rest in the possibility that all is well, that every question leads to understanding, that every moment of confusion is clarity experienced in reverse. Whether time flows forward or backward, whether we're heading toward the unknown or returning to the eternally known, one thing remains beautifully certain. We're not alone on this journey. We're all moving together, supporting each other, sharing this magnificent mystery of existence in all its backwards flowing wonder. Sweet dreams, and may your sleep be filled with glimpses of the perfect reality that awaits us all, wherever and whenever our strange, beautiful journey through time might lead.